Hello, everyone. I welcome you to the Coaching Clarity series. This is your coach, Mehnaz Amjad, and today I would like to walk you through a very interesting topic that's not really often discussed. These are our blind spots. The title of our session today, The Thing About Me I Couldn't See Until Someone Said It Out Loud. I mean, it's a long statement. However, it actually is pointing out to my blind spots. And I'm sure you may also have some. And by far, blind spots are the core reason why something we don't discuss often, why we remain stuck, lost, confused, overwhelmed, and sometimes stuck in a analysis paralysis. So how these blind spots work and how they keep us stuck, let me walk you through an interesting story from my life and how I found my way out so that I help you find yours. Let's get started. So, for years, friends, in most of my feedback sessions after appraisal, mid-year, or even informal discussions, my friends, colleagues, peer group, and outside the professional scenario, my other college friends, they told me that I would avoid conflict. So the way I would do would be that if there's a conflict, I would try to be more silent, very high on harmony, and would often make sure that despite being right, maybe in certain conflicts I'm not at the right side, but regardless whether I'm on the right side or the wrong side, I would make sure that I avoid it. So for years, people said I avoided conflict, but I would say, no, no, no. I just prefer to keep the peace. I'm diplomatic. I'm mature. While I couldn't see that keeping this peace was my way of avoiding conflict, this was one of my own blind spot. What I was not seeing was a blind spot because the way I projected and the way I behaved was more obvious to people than to my own self. And this is precisely why it's called the blind spot. And just the way I couldn't see and continuously argued and get defensive when I was pointed out to the behaviors which said so, I'm sure you may also have something similar going on in your life where perhaps you get some feedback and you immediately get defensive and say, no, 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 this is not me. I would want you to pause and just for a second think, perhaps this is what your blind spot is, which you are also not able to see it either. So let me now continue on with a story that I'm going to share with you today. This is from my life. And through this story, I would want to bring to your attention how blind spots, if not addressed, can play havoc in our life. So many years ago, in my at workspace, when I was into a very senior position. During during a particular session, my boss raised a point. She said it was a coach point at that point in time, even though she was not my official coach, but she raised a point. And very politely, she mentioned to me that a certain competency in the job that I was doing required me to manage stakeholders, and stakeholders, not all clients and stakeholders are easy to manage. They were very difficult clients. So sometimes you need to have a strategic approach in how you deal with those stakeholders. And my approach was I would constantly avoid conflict, wherein I ended up being the yes person. So I would say yes to everything because I wanted harmony. I was very high on harmony. And when I was given this feedback, I immediately dismissed it. So this was my blind spot. I failed to see, and not seeing it for the first time, second time didn't really matter. But then when it became a part of my personality, where initial years, when I was perhaps high on harmony, keeping quiet, having a little bit fear of authority, trying to show myself as very obedient, maybe I was more of a people pleaser, being very high on harmony, this blind spot was not of much of danger or any doing any damage to me. However, but when I was entering as an emerging leader into a space where certain times I have to take a stand, I have to deal with some difficult stakeholders, I had to step up. And I can't always be high on harmony, which is where the breaking point came. And dismissing this feedback for years and years and years, it became part of my personality and it costed me my job. And I lost my job. I was actually fired from my job despite a good performance, which I thought to myself. This made me turn towards my coach because this was a very difficult phase of my life. And when I met my coach, she was a very kind human being who helped me with some tools that help me then understand my blind spots, where for once in my life I was able to see what I dismissed all these years. I was also a little bit grieving this. Why? Because the moment I realized how long was having this blind spot, how many situations it affected. That day, along with my coach, when I did a deep dive sessions, a similar one that I run today with most of my clients, it really changed me. But that day was very difficult. The shame, the grief of how did I not see this so far? I could pick up so many events from my life. And when I connected the dots, I saw so many ways I behaved, each of it pointing me towards that same one blind spot. So here's what I learned about the blind spots. Blind spots is something not that you are, or when I say you or I was hiding, it's something we actually cannot genuinely see. That is the reason it's called a blind spot. So we are not in a denial mode, neither are we lying. It's just that we are unaware of this. We cannot see it. And this is something which is more, we project certain aspects of our behavior which are more known to people outside us than our own self. So now your question would be, then how do we really see this? Well, there are three signs the way you can get to see your blind spot. However, I'll also tell you, friends, one of the best ways is to seek support of a coach because obviously these are just signs. By reading the signs, you really cannot be able to find your blind spots. So the first sign is multiple people over time perhaps may have told you the same thing and you're dismissing it. So it's like a consistent feedback. So as I mentioned to you from my story, from my very early on years of life, I constantly hear it from my informal circle and formal circle that I'm very high on harmony and I avoid conflict. So initially it was all good, not being in bad books of anyone, always being, being very cordial and being very friendly. But then at a certain point, the same blind spot started to take me in a different direction, in a wrong direction rather. And when I was being told by my other kind supervisors or supervisors and also leaders, I kind of dismissed it. So if you have a similar feedback, both from your informal circle and your formal circle, don't dismiss it. Pay attention to it. That's one of the best signs to understand what your blind spots are. Next, if you keep ending up in a similar situation and you keep asking yourself, why? Why do I always do this? There is always a cause to behaviors. When we may get triggered by various other events, but when we repeat the pattern of behavior and almost end up in a very similar situation, like in my case, I was fired twice. I have a separate video with a detailed story on it. You can watch that as well. But I would share here as well. When I always would think myself high on harmony, but this high on harmony, avoiding conflicts, was leading me to getting fired. I was ending up in a situation where the performance appraisal was not in my favor. The feedback was not in my favor, while all the while I was thinking, no, I am such a good performer. How can this be? So this is another way to figure out what is your blind spot when you are in a similar situation and you don't know why. Your self-image and others' perception of you don't match. So when people used to tell me that I was high on harmony, I thought, no, I'm being mature. I am a diplomat. I'm not short-tempered. I don't do this, I that. While majority never thought it was. So the gap is your blind spot. Was my blind spot. Maybe you can recall for yourself. Think about something that you've been getting feedback on, or any perception or any comment that you receive, and you completely think opposite of that. So you're very polite, and people think, no, you always speak your mind, a bit rude, or you're always rational, and people think you're argumentative, stuff like that. That's your blind spot. That's another way, a sign to know your blind spot. However, as I just said, these are just signs. Sign will help you know, but not really find a way out. So in order to really know, the hardest part of the blind spot is we can't see our blind spots alone. That's the most trickiest and complex part. We need a mirror and someone who can reflect back what we can't see. And that's what a coach does. That's what I do. I hold up the mirror for my clients gently, politely, but clearly, so that they are able to see what they've been dismissing, what's invisible to them. And one of the facts of the blind spot from my story, I would tell you, is that it can cost you big things. It's not something that we can just ignore it and say, okay, fine, it's a blind spot, so what? If you really want a transformational change in your life, you need to be aware of your blind spots. It is a bit painful to be aware of it, but then that's where change happens. And it can, at very profound levels, change you and your life for the better. For me, when I saw my blind spots, yes, it was painful. But then it was also the beginning of when everything changed. Because once I started to work on it. And unless you get aware of it, we cannot change it. And to see that, mere science won't help. You need support. So here's a question I have for you. If you want to just get started with the basics, you can just try and answer this question. You can pause the video, make a note of this question, and then try and answer it at your convenience. So what's the thing about you that everyone else sees, but you can't? Or you can even go back to those 3 signs, and there are questions there, and try and answer it. It will give you some idea of what your blind spots are. Other than this, I also have a no cost course. This is a 7-day email course. In this, I covered a complete section on blind spots and along with the tools. So if you are interested, you want to see it, take up this course, because sometimes what we really need is someone to hold up that mirror. To enroll in the course, or if you really want to connect with me, go deeper in understanding your blind spots, working on them, and changing and transforming your life, all the links to the course, to the call are given in the description box of this video. I will be more than happy to assist you. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.